Well, hello and welcome back to another week on my allotment. And let me tell you, this makes a lovely change. It's dry. I mean, it rains most days. Obviously, for the last month or two, it's rained heavily every day. But the last couple of days, it's rained sporadically a little, which has given the ground a chance to let the water table lower. So, of course, the ground is still waterlogged, but there's no standing water, which is just a real treat. The slabs under my covered way are dry for the first time possibly this year since I can remember, because although they're under the polypropylene sheeting, the rain comes in, you know, inevitably the rain drifts in. And there are a couple of drips, so the ground has been wet for a long time. In fact, it's been squelchy and the mud's been coming through. However, right now, and the rain is due in a couple of hours, so it's only a very brief window, but it is dry, and it's treated me to a beautiful sunrise this morning. Absolutely lovely. It's 7:05 in the morning, obviously. It's Sunday morning. And it's the Sunday after the Saturday morning that we all had to go and pay our dues. Now, it said, the email we all received said if you want to pay them earlier in the week, you can. So I went down sometime in the week with my cheque. They've put the price up another £10 a year, so I have to pay on 2 sites or 2 plots, which is a little bit cheeky because they put the price up by a tenner last year. That, I think, last year everyone accepted it. They hadn't put the price up since this ground opened, but to put it up 2 years in a row was naughty, so I feel a bit aggrieved about that. However, for my 2 plots and the bit I've got here, which is about half a plot, I had to pay £170. Now, it's private land, and the allotments in town, they pay well under half what we pay. So this is extremely expensive. But when you think 4 years ago, was it, my wife priced up all the crops we took off these 2 plots, and I didn't have this bit then, and it came to a few quid short of £1,000 worth of food. Well, you think how much prices have escalated since then. That was well before COVID. So even though it's very expensive, and I do slightly resent the increase, it's still value for money. However, I'm hoping if our ambitions come to fruition, that's the last time I'll have to pay this, because I can walk away from this in a year. Anyway, welcome along. It's beautiful to see the sun. Oh, the sun is now coming up. And what am I going to do on the plot today? Well, I've got to be honest, I haven't got a clue. It's no good trying to turn any of the soil, you know, because it's going to rain later, heavy. But, you know, I've got to be up here. It's Sunday morning. Cheryl would be very angry if I stayed at home on a Sunday. She likes her lie-in and her potter, as she calls it. So I shall find some work to do. And I'll tell you in a moment about all the seeds that I'm sowing at home. So, very welcome. Cheers. Oh, that's hot. Well, I should recap on what I've done this week. And I've got to be honest, the weather has been so bad this week that I've barely come out of the sheds. But I grow my favourite pea alderman, which grows to 7-8 feet high, on those 2 pieces of metal Harris fencing, and it's very successful every year. But this year I'm going to grow a purple snap pea, or Monge 2, Rodney, and I don't have another piece of Harris fencing, so I'm creating this frame here, a bit like a bean frame, to grow those purple snap peas up. And at the weekend we went to a garden centre which wasn't very well stocked, and I was hoping to buy some plastic green mesh, fencing mesh, to put up there for the peas to grab onto, but it was so expensive. A strip 5 metres long and 1 metre high, £20. So I thought, right, I'm not paying that. I will find something on my allotment, old chicken wire or whatever, that will do the job perfectly well. I am not paying those rip-off prices. So that's what I've got to do. But the frame has been put in, and it's right on the edge of my plot. That grass beyond does not belong to me. And that's the problem with 2.5 plots. You think I'd have plenty of ground to grow plenty of crops. And of course I have, but when I grow these peas, they will cause a shadow. So the reason I'm doing it on this edge is that ground the other side, that plot, has never been used. It's, you know, it just isn't, like most of the ground here. So if it casts a bit of a shadow later in the day on that path, so be it. I don't worry about it. I'm trying to minimise the shadow on mine, because here I think it's potatoes I'm growing this year, and of course there's my fig in the corner and my mum's raspberries. Well, they're not my mum's anymore, obviously. So yeah, I've created that frame, and I'm going to be looking for some chicken wire or something I can use, but I'm a long way off sowing those anyway. Oh, that does the heart good. Of course, I started by saying that I didn't go down to the farm shop when everyone else went on Saturday morning to pay their money, and then I wandered off to talk about something else. What I meant to say was I was hoping to be able to tell you today who is and isn't renewing their contract. Well, of course, because I wasn't down there Saturday morning, I don't know. So as we stand right now, I have no idea if anybody has decided to, you know, give it up and let somebody else have a go at growing fruits and vegetables. So I'm sorry about that. I don't have the latest intel. I will endeavour to find out this week. Sometimes the daughter of the landowner walks up on a Sunday morning with her little dogs. If I see her, I shall go and accost her and engage her in polite conversation and try and get that information. But I thought I should take the opportunity just to say thank you to all of those people who came back to me about where they are. I said in my previous video, you know, I've got 59% of my viewers are in the UK, which is what you'd expect, of course. So thank you to everyone who came back to me, and I'm happy to report that Hanley plotters flock live as far and wide as Australia, Thailand, Southern Ireland, Northern Ireland, Canada, the US and Sweden. Well, I think, you know, I just think that's lovely. Thank you to all of you who came back and told me that. You're all very welcome from all around the globe. It's lovely. Yeah, it's very nice. So thank you very much for that. And like I say, as soon as I know what's going on the site, I'll let you know. I've mentioned before that nature marches on. It takes no account of the weather. It just carries on doing its thing. It's a beautiful thing to watch. Unfortunately, most people aren't connected to nature anymore, and they don't take the time to just stand and take in what's around them. They're usually busy looking at a screen. But yeah, these are my blueberry bushes, and you can see these fat buds just about to break. It's absolutely lovely. And of course, this is right up next to my shed, so it's very often one of the things I come out and take note of. It's lovely to see. And this week I swapped out the snowdrops and put in these mini daffodils, which are glorious. It's just out of shot, I know, but there's nowhere better to be on a cold winter's day than in the shed with the fire going. I've said before, my son David lives in Canada, in Yellowknife. And whenever I think the weather's bad here with all this persistent rain, I hear from him and he tells me what's going on in Yellowknife. And it just reminds me that, you know, our climate is nothing to complain about. So, but anyway, I wanted to say a public thank you to him. He had a win on the premium bonds, a jammy what's it. So Cheryl sent out the, I don't know what he has to do, but I think he has to sign something before he gets the money. It was only 50 quid, but, you know, it's better than having 50 quid taken off you, isn't it? So him winning money costs us money. Anyway, when he sent back whatever it is he has to send back to claim his money, he included 2 tea towels. And he actually said in his in the letter in the parcel, I know Dad won't actually use these. Why would I use a tea towel? But I'd like to say thank you to him. They're both canoe orientated. Love many, trust few, always paddle your own canoe. Yeah, why would you love many? I don't trust anybody and I don't love many. Maybe I ought to change that. Maybe I should love a few more. But I definitely only paddle my own canoe. So thank you very much. And there's another one, which is a bit philosophical. Take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but ripples. Waste nothing but time. Let me tell you, every minute spent in a canoe is not a minute wasted. So yeah, thank you very much. Obviously I'm not going to use them to dry things because they'd get dirty, but I'm going to hang them up somewhere. I'm not quite sure where yet, but thank you very much, David and Nikki. If you're in the UK, and of course quite a few of you aren't, there's been a story this week about a £500 World War II bomb found in a back garden in Plymouth. And they've had a bit of a hoo-ha. Obviously they've had to do something with it. To render safe a bomb, what the most common method is to remove the fuse, which has its own problems because some of them are anti-handling, and then you steam pressure wash out the explosives inside, and you bag it up and you take it away, and then you end up with an empty metal carcass. But that can take days and days. It's a very slow process. Well, of course, this is right in the middle of the heart of the city of Plymouth. So that option wasn't open to them. Anyway, long story short, what they did is they put it on the back of a lorry, they took it out to sea and they disposed of it. But you can imagine, it was in the press, it caused all sorts of problems for the local community. And it reminded me, I was a bomb disposal officer in my time in the army. I always remember a fisherman. I go up to Bigswear Estate on a Wednesday, I work there, and a fisherman said, "Oh, you're a bomb disposal officer. I've always wanted to meet a bomb disposal officer. Why would you volunteer to dispose of bombs? It's incredibly dangerous." And I thought, no one's ever asked me that before. That's a really good question. Why the bloody hell would I do that? Well, let me tell you why I did it. The commanding officer of the bomb disposal regiment wanted to see me. I was a warrant officer at the time. And he asked me to sit down in his office, which is very rare. That got me nervous. Anyway, at the time, I was the unit diving officer. I was a diving supervisor, and I ran the diving team. And all over the country, there are thousands and thousands of unexploded World War II bombs. Most of them are recorded, and they know where they are. For example, I mean, it's not widely known, and because my channel's so small, it still won't be, that many of these very large bombs, the 2,000 pounders and larger, when they hit the ground in London during the Blitz, they went so deep, it was just impractical to get at them. And later on, the decision was made that they would leave them where they are in situ. They become, harmless enough. If they're 8 metres down, which some of them are, 6 to 8 metres down, leave them where they are. The only rule that was brought in was that you weren't allowed to put residential housing over the top of where these locations were. So if you go into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's in the London area, the chances are that underneath you it's a 2,000 pound unexploded bomb. Not a lot of people know that. Anyway, back to my little story. Yeah, a lot of these devices are in water. So it has a unique problem, because not only do you have to be a bomb disposal officer to deal with them, you've got to be able to get there, and you've got to be a diver. And there's not many underwater bomb disposal experts. So I was asked if I would go and do the course, and I said yes, I would. I felt sort of morally obliged, really. Anyway, it was a very difficult course, as you can imagine. And anyway, I became a bomb disposal officer. Now, one job we did, just to give you a little bit of background, during the Second World War, the British were afraid that the Germans would fly in spies onto one of the reservoirs, the many reservoirs that surround London, and then the spies would land, go ashore, and then walk into London and do whatever the spies would do. So what they did is they run cables across all our reservoirs around London, and they attach these sea mines. Now, you've seen the sea mines on the films, you know, they're big round metal blobs with spikes, little spikes, antenna that stick out. And they're 2/3 full, or sometimes a third full, of explosives. The rest of that big round ball is air to keep it afloat. Well, at the end of the Second World War, the Home Guard were tasked with going around these reservoirs and shooting these mines. Well, of course, everyone thinks if you shoot a mine, it'll blow up. Well, it doesn't. In most cases, what they did is they shot through the air pocket, and the thing sank into the reservoir, which was fine for them. They, you know, they're underwater, they're out of sight, out of mind. But in the 1990s, Colchester had there was a reservoir near Colchester, and they wanted to expand the reservoir. So what they had to do was take drillings and readings through the reservoir bed to decide whether the clay bottom could withstand this reservoir being enlarged. It's all engineering and it's beyond me. But they had to drill through the reservoir bed, and of course the historians could tell them that there were sea mines down there. And these little spikes that are on the mine, they're the detonator, that they trigger the mine. They need 2 pounds per square inch of pressure to knock them sideways and detonate the mine. And they're on the bed of this reservoir, so my diving team was tasked to go in. We didn't have to search the whole reservoir bed, we just had to search a few 100 metres square where they were going to come and bring this raft and drilling rig. Well, of course, it's nil visibility down there, and we didn't have any of the modern equipment they have now to detect air pockets and things underwater. So we had to do it by hand, and that was an interesting job, let me tell you, going along searching, knowing that if you touch something and you put more than 2 pounds per square inch of pressure on, it might go bang and you would disappear very, very quickly, as would the boat above you. I mean, the chances are they would have been rusted. Anyway, for our time we were there, we did find one, and all you do is you take a thing called a 4 pound pack. It's basically a little satchel of explosives, you place it next to it, boom, and it's gone. The problem was, the funny bit was, that we were doing it in the winter and the reservoir was frozen, and it was time critical, so we couldn't wait for spring and the thaw. And army diving regulations state that if you're diving on ice, that you should use a boat, an inflatable Gemini boat, and you stand in the boat and you drill a hole through the ice. I mean, the ice was only a couple of inches thick, so you could walk across it, but it wasn't so thick that you couldn't make a hole. And the divers go down through the hole and they did their search patterns. They've got a rope tied to their chest, and all they do is they follow the rope back to the hole, and out they come. Well, you can imagine we were quite a sight, 100 metres off the shore of this reservoir, standing, there's ice as far as the eye can see, and we're standing in a boat on ice, holding these ropes of the divers. And of course, round this reservoir is a footpath. So as these members of the public went past, we got a certain amount of ribbing because we looked silly standing in a boat on ice. Anyway, this job took a couple of weeks, and while we were there one day and we're standing in the boat, and of course to go back to the shore you just walk across, it wasn't a problem. But we were stood in this, about 3 or 4 of us stood in the boat, and you heard this just like you see in the cartoons, these zigzags of ice, these cracks going all across the ice, and then there was a loud boom and the ice gave way and the boat dropped into the water. And then you realise why the regulations say what they say, and we were all perfectly safe because we were now stood in the boat with a load of floating ice. But it was sod's law, there was no members of the public around to see, and they'd been taking the mickey out of us for 2 weeks, and then the ice gave way and we were all perfectly safe, and we looked rather clever then. Anyway, the job was done, and they enlarged the reservoir, and that was why they needed underwater bomb disposal officers. But anyway, a mildly interesting story. Well, here you can see what I meant about the dry slabs. And actually I cheated. That wood that you can see stored there, I took small pieces of that wood and I lifted every one of those slabs and I put the bits of wood under them just to lift them out of the mud. And it's done the trick. I'm not squelching about anymore. I probably just made a thoroughfare for the mice, but I've got dry feet and dry slabs, so I'm happy. Well, I said I wasn't going to do this, but I've got nothing else to do, to be honest. And it does make the soil look a lot better, and if we get some dry weather, it does dry it out quicker. Although the clouds are now gathering, so the rain is on its way. Just an update on the broad beans. They've been in, I think it's 2 weeks now, or a week, I can't remember. But I've got these glass panels to screen them from the storm winds, and we've got more coming tomorrow. And the ditch with the pipe running off to the ditch around the plot has kept the water down to a reasonable level. And I can see that I mean, at the moment they've survived the slugs. There's a few holes in some of them, but it might be my imagination, but it looks to me like there's a bit of strong new growth at the tops. So I think they've not only survived being put into the ground in the bad outside world, that they're now settled in and they're ready to grow away. So we're rather pleased about that. And we have got some dry weather in the forecast ahead. Not a lot. The main theme is rain, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as it has been. So yeah, I'm optimistic that we will get a crop of broad beans this year. This is the lowest bed. This is the bottom bed of the plot. It's the wettest plot there is, or the wettest bed. And this is all garlic. Not quite so optimistic about this. I think the tops are being nibbled off. I didn't think much at garlic, but they've definitely been attacked. And they have been underwater a little bit in the last couple of weeks. But hopefully now, with slightly less wet weather, they might get away. I'd love to know what's nibbling them. But these were put in very recently. This bed was put in a couple of months ago, and because this bed is much higher up the plot, it doesn't get the waterlogging that lower bed gets. So I was happy to put these in a few months ago, or a couple of months ago, and they're much stronger plants for it. If the plot didn't get so waterlogged, I would have much better overwintering crops. And I've made a note of this. These are all multi-sown onions. And there's a dividing line there. These multi-sown onions were sown on the 28th of August. These were sown on the 28th of September. A month's difference, but what a difference in the strength and size of the plants. So as long as none of these bolt, and they were grown from seed, so they shouldn't, that's the key. These ones are the better, the stronger. So if I'm going to have overwintering multi-sown onions, sow them at the end of August. Note to self. Well, I'm still a long way off sowing any peas, but when I do, those purple snap peas are going on there. That's all finished at nil cost. Membrane back to suppress the weeds. Right, brew time. I've said many times before, I never come up here with a plan. I just wander around aimlessly and come up with things to do. And I've thought of another one. These pots. I grow carrots and parsnips in them. And what I do every year about this time is I take out all that soil, which is a 50-50 mix of soil and horticultural sand, and I put manure or compost in the bottom, and then I put the soil back in, and it comes up to within an inch of the top. Well, you can see these here over the year when I grew the carrots. The soil, because it's got manure or compost in the bottom, has sunk down to about 6 inches from the top, so that needs to go back up prior to sowing my first carrots in March. So there's a job I can get on with in slow time over the next couple of weeks. I think I'll start today. So, one complete. So it's got that lovely rich manure filling up the bottom 6 to 8 inches, and then this loose soil back on the top, and it's rather full at the moment, but I know from experience that that will drop down an inch or two before I come to sow my carrots. So one done, 8 to go. Normal service has been resumed, the rain has come back, the ground is wet out there, so I'm going to call it a day. I'm quite a hardy chap. You can't be a self-employed gardener in the southeast of Wales if you're not fairly hardy with the weather. But I've got to say, maybe it's my age, and I've been gardening now 15 years, but I found this winter, physically it's taken its toll, and mentally as well. It's, when you wake up in the morning and you're having your breakfast and you're getting ready to go out, and you can hear the rain hammering on the window, and you've got 8 hours of it with no shelter. It gets a bit much, and anyway. You don't want to hear my problems. So yeah, I'm going to call it a day, and the rain can do its thing. So thank you for watching. Thanks to all those who subscribed, and again thank you to all those who let me know what part of the world, some of the exotic locations people are watching my channel from. It's lovely to hear from you all. I would just give a quick update on my propagator that's got, you know, a warm mat underneath and these little trays with lids. What I've discovered is because of the heat, it grows the seedlings very, very, very long, and then the leaves on the top, and you know, some of the stems of these plants are 2 inches long now. Well, that's okay with tomatoes because I've taken some out of the propagator, I've potted them on, and I've planted them deep, which you can do with tomatoes. So it's very good for tomatoes. Of course, the trouble is it's still February. I've potted them on. They're on a windowsill in the house, so they're okay. But I'm going to have the same problem as I've had before. It'll be March, and they'll be good-sized plants, and what do I do with them? I can't put them out. So I'm not convinced that a propagator for me is the way to go. I think, you know, especially with all the tomatoes I grow outdoors, you don't really need to sow them until the end of March, April time. Because we don't use them fresh. We freeze them in sauces and in whole and so on and so forth for the winter. So it doesn't matter if we're not harvesting them till September. So, you know, it only cost me 30 quid, it's not the end of the world. But I'm not particularly enamoured with the propagator system. I don't need plants that early. So it was worth a go, and it's not a complete failure. But it's growing lettuces, and the lettuce stems are, you know, they're not growing as lettuces, they're just very long stems. I suppose what I should have done was prick them out sooner, but anyway, it was worth a go, but I'm not that impressed. Nothing wrong with the propagator, it works perfectly. It's the operator. So anyway, thanks again. I'll be around next weekend, I would guess. We've got a couple of days of dry weather. Monday, Tuesday look fairly dry, which will be nice. Oh, will it be nice. So I hope wherever you are, your garden is coming along a treat. I have to say, you know, next time I post a video, it will be March. And, you know, March is a good month. March means the winter is behind you. It doesn't mean you can't have frosts and snow and driving rain. Of course you can. But the winter is pretty much behind you, and you've got the whole of the spring and the summer ahead of you. March is a good month to get to. So, enjoy your gardens, have a good week, look after yourselves, and until I see you again, take care, bye for now.